Sarah Mitchell had spent 17 years preparing for a wedding that never arrived. She had imagined the day since she was a teenager, walking down an aisle with her heart full, her family cheering, a man beside her who looked at her like she was everything he'd ever needed. She had imagined it so often that she could recite it in her sleep. But when her 25th birthday passed without a ring, the whispers began. By 30, the whispers became concerned conversations. By 35, they turned into pitying silences. And by 42, the whispers were no longer whispers at all. They were just quiet. Like everyone had given up trying to understand why she was still alone. The final blow came in the form of a cream-colored wedding invitation with gold lettering. Emma Johnson and Marcus Williams. June 15th. Sarah stood in her small Chicago apartment, staring at the card as if it might suddenly change its mind and become a birthday invitation instead. Emma, her niece, her sister's daughter, the child Sarah had rocked to sleep as a baby, was getting married. She had once taught Emma how to braid hair and tie shoelaces. Emma had once told her, wide-eyed and hopeful, that she wanted to be just like Aunt Sarah when she grew up. And now she was 23 and engaged. Sarah did the math in her head, the math she had tried to avoid for years. 42. Unmarried. Still waiting. The grief came in waves. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was deeper than that. It was the feeling of watching life pass by while she stood still. It was the knowledge that the dreams she had been building her entire adult life were no longer dreams, they were memories of what she had expected. She sank onto her worn sofa and let the tears come. The kind that made her whole body shake. The kind that came from a place so deep she didn't even know it existed. God, she whispered into the empty room. Are you even listening? Everyone else gets their turn. Why not me? What did I do wrong? Outside, Chicago kept living. Car horns. Distant sirens. People laughing on the sidewalk. The city's heartbeat pulsing with life, while hers felt suspended in time. Sarah had moved into this apartment at 28, believing it would be temporary. A place to stay until she married and moved into a home with her husband. She kept the walls mostly bare because she didn't want to invest too much in a space she didn't plan to stay in. But years had passed. The temporary had become permanent. The bare walls mocked her with their emptiness. On Sunday morning, she sat in her usual spot at Grace Community Church, third row from the back, right side. She had sat there for 20 years, ever since she moved to Chicago fresh out of college. Full of dreams. Full of expectations. Back then, she believed she'd be married by 27. Maybe 2 kids by 30. Settled in a house in the suburbs by 35. Life had other plans. Pastor James preached about patience, Abraham and Sarah waiting for their promised child. Sarah almost laughed. She had heard this sermon in many different forms. She'd once found comfort in it. Now, it felt like a phrase people used to make the hurting feel better. Sometimes God's delays are not denials, Pastor James said, his voice warm. Sometimes He's preparing us for something greater than we could imagine. Sarah looked at the woman beside her. Her hand was on her Bible, underlining passages. A wedding ring glittered on her finger. Of course. The married people were always the ones who found sermons about patience inspiring. After the service, Margaret Chen approached her with that familiar look, the look of someone about to offer advice disguised as concern. Sarah, dear, Margaret began. Have you tried those Christian dating sites? My cousin's daughter met her husband on. I've tried them all, Margaret, Sarah interrupted gently. Thank you, though. Margaret nodded as if Sarah had simply forgotten something. Maybe you're being too picky. You know, nobody's perfect. Sometimes we have to compromise. Lower the bar a little. You're not getting any younger. The words stung. Margaret probably didn't mean to hurt her, but the message was clear. Her life was a failure unless she accepted something less than she deserved. Sarah smiled, excused herself, and walked away. She told herself she had to get to a meeting that didn't exist. She just needed to escape. Outside, she heard fragments of conversations. A young woman describing her boyfriend's proposal, a mother talking about her son's upcoming wedding, an older couple laughing about their anniversary. Sarah felt like she was drowning in other people's happiness. She sat in her car for a long time before starting the engine. The questions crowded her mind like stones. Maybe she was too picky. Maybe she focused too much on her career. Maybe her success intimidated men. Maybe she needed to lose weight, smile more, be less opinionated, wear makeup, try a new hairstyle, lower her standards, raise her faith, pray more, pray differently. The maybes piled up until she felt she couldn't breathe. The truth was she had tried everything. She prayed. She fasted. She joined every church committee, hoping she'd meet someone. She volunteered for everything: youth group helper, worship team coordinator, women's ministry assistant. She went on countless first dates. Conversations felt forced. Men seemed disappointed. Setups went nowhere. She had 2 relationships that felt promising, then collapsed without warning. Michael, when she was 29. 8 months. He met her family. They talked about the future. Then one day, out of nowhere, he said they weren't compatible and ended it. James, at 36. They met at a church conference and connected instantly. Long distance was hard, but they made it work for a year and a half. Sarah planned to relocate. Then he confessed he'd reconnected with an ex and still loved her. Sarah had been the backup plan without even knowing. After that, she became guarded, careful, afraid to hope. She had lived a good Christian life, served in ministry, tithing faithfully even when money was tight, attending Bible studies and prayer meetings. Yet she was alone. On a Tuesday evening, she sat across from her best friend Rachel Thompson at the Daily Grind, small coffee shop tucked away on a quiet street. Rachel had been married for 15 years, with 3 children and a home in the suburbs. She meant well, but sometimes her encouragement missed the mark. Maybe God's just protecting you from the wrong person, Rachel said, stirring her latte. His timing is perfect. Everything happens for a reason. Sarah's voice cracked. What if there is no right person? What if God's plan for me doesn't include marriage? And why does everyone else get their prayers answered except me? I've been praying for 17 years and I have nothing to show for it but an empty apartment and a church full of people who pity me. Rachel squeezed her hand, and for once didn't offer a platitude. She just listened. Sarah continued, I went to a wedding last month. The bride was 24. 8 months of dating and she's walking down the aisle. 17 years of waiting for me. What am I doing wrong? Rachel didn't have an answer. Nobody did. The following weeks were dark. Sarah stopped attending church events. She couldn't bow another wedding shower. Another pregnancy announcement. Another couple bragging about their perfect relationship. She still went to Sunday service but slipped in late and left early, avoiding eye contact. She parked far away to escape quickly. She stopped volunteering, claiming she needed a break. At work, she buried herself in projects. At least success there was measurable. Unlike her personal life, where effort never seemed to change anything. Her co-workers noticed. Emily, her assistant, asked if everything was okay. Sarah brushed it off. Inside, she thought, you're 26. You don't know what real waiting feels like. Then, one Saturday morning, she ran into David Park at Whole Foods. She had seen him around church for years but never spoken beyond pleasantries. He was staring at 2 pizza brands like the decision was cosmic. Having trouble deciding? She asked, surprising herself. David smiled warmly. You'd think frozen pizza would be simple. But here I am, paralyzed by options. He introduced himself. He was 45, a high school English teacher and debate coach. Never married. He mentioned it casually, without shame. Sarah recommended the pizza on the left. They began talking. An hour later, their carts were abandoned. They moved from frozen foods to produce to the bakery section. Conversation flowed easily. Sarah felt something shift, not romantic interest yet, but recognition. Someone who understood. Someone who didn't need her to explain her singleness. They talked about their families. David's parents had been married for 50 years before his father died. He was always the uncle at family gatherings, seated at the kids' table because there was no spouse beside him. Sarah told him about her parents in Boston, still happily married after 4 to 5 years. Her younger sister Jennifer, married with 3 kids. Her older brother Michael, married with twins. Sarah was the only one who came to Thanksgiving alone. The pity is almost worse than the loneliness, she admitted. They exchanged numbers. Sarah surprised herself by hoping he would call. She had stopped hoping years ago. Hope was dangerous. Hope led to disappointment. But David called that very evening. They talked for 3 hours about books, work, church, disappointments. Sarah realized she hadn't thought of her singleness as a problem for the first time in months. She had simply enjoyed being human. Then she stopped herself from hoping. David might just be friendly. He might call everyone. She was probably reading too much into a conversation. But he called again the next day. And the day after. Soon, it became a pattern. They met for coffee after church on Sundays, and Sarah began to look forward to it. Rachel noticed immediately. "Who's that?" Rachel whispered, nodding toward David. "Just a friend," Sarah said quickly. Rachel smiled knowingly. "Just a friend who you meet every week and talk to every night." Sarah refused to name it. She didn't want expectations. She didn't want to set herself up for disappointment. Their friendship grew deeper. They visited museums, walked along the lakefront, tried new restaurants. David introduced Sarah to jazz clubs. Sarah introduced him to hiking. David fit into her life effortlessly. He got along with Rachel and her family. Sarah met his colleagues and saw how respected he was. His students adored him. But Sarah kept her heart guarded. When David looked at her with something deeper, she feared it. When Rachel pressed her, Sarah shut down. When her mother asked about that man, Sarah insisted they were just friends. She was terrified. David never pushed. He seemed content with whatever they were. But Sarah sometimes caught him looking at her like he wanted more. 6 months into their friendship, David invited her to dinner at a nice restaurant. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his napkin. "Is everything okay?" she asked. David took a deep breath. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. These past few months have been incredible. You've become my closest friend. But I know, I'm feeling something more than friendship." Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment she had prayed for. The moment she had waited 17 years for. But instead of joy, she felt panic. "David, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I understand if you don't feel the same. But I couldn't keep pretending." The rest of the dinner was awkward. David drove her home and sat in his car outside her apartment for minutes without speaking. "I'm sorry if I made things weird," he said. "You didn't," she replied. I need time." That night, she couldn't sleep. She paced her apartment, praying, crying, confused. David was kind, faithful, shared her values, made her laugh. On paper, he was everything she should want. But something held her back. She was afraid. She called Rachel at midnight. "I think I'm afraid to be happy," she confessed. Rachel was quiet. Then she said, "Sarah, you can't live your life afraid of being hurt. Sometimes you have to take the risk." "But what if it works out? What if it hurts again? What if it works out?" Rachel asked gently. "What if David is everything you've been praying for and you let fear steal it?" Sarah couldn't hear it. The fear was too loud. She pulled away. Cancelled coffee dates. Sent short texts. Started attending early service to avoid him. David tried to give her space while reaching out. He sent messages. Left a voicemail. Even mailed a card. 3 weeks later, Pastor James called her into his office. David was there, looking exhausted. Sarah's heart clenched. David asked if I would mediate a conversation. Pastor James said gently, "Sarah, would you be willing to talk?" Sarah wanted to run. But she owed David more than avoidance. She nodded. Pastor James prayed, then left them alone. "Sarah," David began, voice shaking. "I'm not trying to pressure you. But you won't even talk to me. We were friends. Now you're avoiding me. If you're not interested, I can handle rejection. But I need to know what's happening." The dam broke. 17 years of pain poured out. The failed relationships. The unanswered prayers. The shame. The loneliness. The constant cycle of hope and heartbreak. "I've spent my whole adult life waiting," she said through tears. "Waiting for someone to choose me. And now that it might be here, I'm paralyzed. What if it's not real? What if I'm not enough?" David listened without interrupting. When she finished, he spoke softly. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "I'm scared too." He told her about his own fear. 4 to 5 years old. Never chosen. Teaching teenagers. Respected. Loved by students. Yet he still didn't know how to make someone want to spend their life with him. "When I met you," he said, "I thought you were out of my league. Beautiful, successful, put together. I almost didn't ask for your number. But I did. And you said yes." He paused. "For the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not the single guy at church. Not the perpetual uncle. Not the teacher. Just me. David." Sarah looked at him, surprised. "I'm scared," he continued. "I don't know how to be in a relationship. I might mess it up. But I think you're worth the risk. I think we're worth the risk." Pastor James returned quietly, sitting down with them. "Sarah," he said gently, "you've served faithfully for 20 years. You've trusted God with everything except this one area. You've prayed for marriage but built walls so high that even if God sent you what you prayed for, you wouldn't be able to receive it." His words hit her like cold water. She had prayed for something while protecting herself from it. "I'm scared," she whispered. David reached for her hand. "I'm scared too." For the first time in 17 years, Sarah made a choice not based on fear. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's try." David smiled, relief flooding his face. "Yes," he said. "We'll try." Their relationship wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy, awkward, full of difficult conversations. They had to learn how to communicate, how to fight fairly, how to be patient with each other's wounds. Sarah had moments of panic where she wanted to run. David had moments of insecurity where he pulled away. But they kept choosing each other. When Sarah panicked, David didn't run. He stayed. When David pulled away, Sarah reached for him. They attended counseling with Pastor James. They read books about relationships, attachment styles, and learning to love after years of protection. They took things slowly. 6 weeks passed before their first kiss. Tentative, nervous, perfect. Sarah cried afterward, overwhelmed by the feeling of letting someone in after years of keeping everyone out. They celebrated small victories. The first time Sarah had a panic attack and didn't push David away. The first time David shared his deepest insecurity and Sarah didn't judge him. The first time they fought and resolved it. They introduced each other to their families. David's mother cried when she met Sarah, hugging her tightly. Sarah's parents flew in from Boston. Her father pulled David aside and said, "Don't hurt my daughter. She's been through enough." Emma was thrilled. "I knew it," she squealed. "See? God's timing is perfect." Sarah smiled without correcting her. Let Emma keep her fairy tale version of timing. Sarah's reality was more complicated. 8 months into their relationship, on a cold December evening, David proposed. Not in a fancy restaurant. Not at a romantic overlook. In Sarah's apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. They had been helping David pack for a new job opportunity in Seattle. Sarah was wrapping dishes in newspaper when David stopped packing, knelt down, and opened a small velvet box. "What are you doing?" she asked, confused. "I don't want to wait for the perfect moment," David said. "There is no perfect moment. There's just us, right now, choosing to build a life together." He promised to choose her every day, to be patient with her fears, to build a life worth the years they'd spent waiting. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, voice shaking, "will you marry me?" Sarah looked at him, 45 years old, risking his heart just as she was risking hers. "Yes," she whispered. They cried, laughed, held each other among boxes. Their wedding was simple, held at Grace Community Church. Sarah walked down the aisle alone, not because her father wasn't there, but because she wanted to claim this choice. She wanted to walk herself into the future she had waited so long for. The church that had witnessed her pain now witnessed her joy. David stood at the front, crying. When Sarah reached him, he whispered, "You're really here." "I'm really here," she whispered back. Pastor James spoke about God's timing, not as punishment, but as preparation. The waiting hadn't been wasted. It had transformed her. Not into the woman she'd imagined at 25. That woman was too naive, too focused on timelines, too afraid of vulnerability. The waiting had humbled her, broken her, remade her. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Pastor James said. David kissed her. The church erupted in cheers. At the reception, Rachel gave a toast. "I've watched Sarah wait and hurt and almost give up," she said. "But she kept going. She taught me what real faith looks like." Emma stood, radiant and sure. "Aunt Sarah taught me it's never too late," she said. "God's plans aren't bound by calendars. The best things are worth waiting for." Sarah smiled through tears, touched by her niece's certainty. Later, as Sarah and David danced their first dance, she whispered, "I spent 17 years angry at God. What do you understand now?" David asked. "That he wasn't withholding something from me," she said. "He was preparing me. I wasn't ready for you at 25. Maybe you weren't ready for me either. But we're ready now." David hugged her closer. "I'm grateful we found each other when we did." "I almost gave up," Sarah admitted. "But you didn't," he said. "That's what matters." The years that followed weren't perfect, but they were good. They moved to Seattle for David's job. Sarah found work at a marketing firm. They bought a small house with a garden David tended obsessively. They adopted a golden retriever named Jazz. They had fights about money and chores and holidays. They had moments when old patterns resurfaced. But they also had quiet mornings drinking coffee, long walks, evenings reading together.